Well, we're doing a series of interviews with top talent from the private wealth sector. I'm delighted to be joined by Melissa Joseph from Kingsley Napley.
Thank you for having me.
Great to chat to you today. If people haven't met you at our Next Gen lunch events, it'd be great for you to introduce yourself and explain a little bit more about what you do.
Sure. My name is Melissa Joseph. I am an associate in our private client team at Kingsley Napley.
So tell us a little bit more about Kingsley Napley. I mean, in the private client world, they're a well-known name.
That's
but for
good to
people
know.
who haven't come across the firm, what does the firm look like?
Sure. So Kingsley Napley is an independent law firm in London. We are a top 100 firm. I would describe us as being confidently led. We are beaming with talent. We are proud of our independence, but we also have an international outlook. We are keen on diversity as well as AI, and I think we are at a unique stage in our firm where we have just transitioned to a new managing partner, and so we are at this amazing, phenomenal growth stage, which is really exciting for me, in particular as a junior, because you're getting to watch how firms think strategically and how they work on the business of law, but also being advisors in the law, and how the two intersect and meet each other, and I think that's really exciting.
Because there's notable practice areas in immigration, family,
Yes,
I mean, a lot of people
our
know
crime
them from crime
practice, litigation practice, yes.
And what about yourself? So what's your area of focus?
Sure, so I work within our private client team. I'm currently focused on the quarter protection work, which means we help vulnerable people who lack mental capacity to manage their property and financial affairs, which I think is a really interesting area of law at the moment, because unfortunately we are at a time where dementia is on the increase, and we are seeing lots more vulnerable clients being financially abused, whether that's through their power of attorney or because they've had some form of accident. And similarly with our younger clients, they have usually been the victim of some form of negligence and have received a compensation award. And so we help their families manage the significant lump of money they've received, and help them purchase houses to live.
It must be satisfying to see
clients. It is so
clients.
Satisfying, yeah. It is very fulfilling, but I think it's very eye-opening as well, because you just don't realise how much money impacts day-to-day life until you lack capacity to be able to deal with it yourself.
Wow.
Yeah.
How long have you been in that area, and how long have you been at Kingsley Napley in total?
Sure, so I've been at Kingsley Napley for just over 7 years. Okay. I started off as a paralegal in our wonderful regulatory team, and I moved up the ranks to head paralegal. I had the opportunity to go on to comment as a client during the pandemic, and then I came back and then became a trainee within the firm. So I've literally lived and breathed Kingsley Napley.
Right.
And then I did my training contract where I did corporate commercial finance, public law, litigation, and private client. And I have been with our private client team for just about 1.5 years.
Did you always want to be working in the law? Like, what was your thinking when you were kind of going through education and things like that?
So at A-level, I decided I wanted to pursue a career in the law. I just thought it was interesting and intellectually stimulating. And so I did a law degree at my undergrad, and then didn't do my LPC straight away. I wanted to get more legal work experience, so I started my career on the high street, which was fantastic because it's not so bureaucratic. So you're kind of thrown into the deep end. It's a baptism of fire, and whatever you want to do, you can basically do. And so I had the opportunity to learn so much, but I lacked commercial experience. So I then went on to work for the Lord Mayor of the City of London, so not Sadiq Khan, the City of London, in Mansion House, and then I went to work.
That must have been a terrific experience.
Wonderful, because actually it was during Brexit, and so we were seeing talks by David Cameron, by the Chancellor, in person, and it was just the commercial experience I needed. And then I wanted to get some international experience, so I went to study and live in New York for 1 year, which was phenomenal, and then came back, did my LPC, and started at Kingsley Napley.
So in New York, you were in a law firm there?
No, so in New York, I did structured finance events and conferences. So I guess it was omen to what I was going to end up doing.
So not the typical route, as you would say.
So I had a boss while I was at the Lord Mayor's office who said to me, once you qualify as a lawyer, you will do that for many years. Yeah. Working in New York is an amazing opportunity, and you should take it. And actually, it was fantastic because we were sent to Miami, New York, Vegas, Barcelona, listening to the challenges with the economy and how they were going to combat those issues. And I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Big Short, where they basically tell the world that they've crashed the economy. It was those exact conferences. So it's pretty cool, I think.
Wow.
Yeah,
And
it was
that was
great.
pre-pandemic?
It was pre-pandemic, yeah. It was a really awesome experience and just gave me the insight into the commerciality that I wanted. And so then I started as a paralegal at Kingsley Napley, and the rest is history.
Wow, and so what's the kind of trainee environment at Kingsley Napley? Is there a lot of trainees kind of recruited? What's the business culture like?
So there's about 8 to 9 trainees per year. Depending on the year, sometimes it could be 7. I would say 7 to 9. But I think it's a fantastic training culture. It's a firm where we do very interesting, meaningful work. And so from the very get-go, you are thrown in to be able to have client contact, to work on the very interesting cases. You're not just doing bundling, you're actually, having to go out drafting. And I think it's very important because as a trainee, I think you want to be perfect, but emphasis is on training. You want the opportunity to train and fail in a safe environment so that you could be better at your job. And I think that's what Kingsley Napley affords its trainees. Certainly that was my experience.
And I guess your experience coming into it, because you'd had some life experience,
yes,
you traveled.
exactly.
You must have felt ahead of the game in a sense.
Yeah, I think so. I think working in the city can be quite daunting, especially if you come from a social mobility background where you don't have family or friends who work in the city.
Yeah.
And so my intention was to build on that experience and knowledge based on the advice I had received by previous managers and mentors. And I think at Kingsley Napley, I was then really allowed to hone on those skills and also was given an opportunity as to what else I need to learn, what else I can learn, but in a safe environment. And I think leadership is something we're really, really focused on. So I mentioned that we are led confidently, but also I think they also allow you to become a leader yourself. Yeah. And I've never felt that I could not say my own suggestions and, get feedback on them to learn and grow. And I think that's very exciting.
So it's sort of the environment fosters a culture where you can speak up, and you're backed if you wanted to go out and do something with sound intention.
Yeah, exactly. I think if it fits within our firm's strategy and our focus, I think Kingsley Napley is a place where you can meaningfully engage with your growth in that way. Certainly that has been my experience and why I've been there for so long.
So do you plan to focus in on private client then going forward and build a career in that stream?
Yes, I do. So private client was my first seat. Yeah. And what struck me by private client was I was starting to attend lots of female investing events about the importance of women investing, but also people from, again, social mobile backgrounds who are now working in industries where they are making more money than, say, their parents ever did, and are not financially literate, and also are now listening to a lot of people online talking about investing, but realizing that's only one element of it. We're not even talking about trusts and inheritance tax, or even the basic thing like marriage revokes a will. These things are not common knowledge to people who are not of that ilk or come from that background where money is readily discussed so openly. And for me, I was like, wow, I'm thinking I'm ahead of the curve because I'm going to events about female investing, but there is a whole world that I don't know of. And there are a whole class of people who are going to hold a lot of wealth that also don't have access to this information, who are just like me. And I think that is a client base and a clientele that I can certainly relate to.
And so you tried other seats and it just didn't quite, it wasn't the same. You say you started in private client.
So in all honesty, I loved all my seats. Yeah. I think that's because on the high street, you do everything. And so I started my legal career being exposed to everything. One day I would do immigration, the next day I was in the criminal courts, the next day I was in a family court. So actually the decision to qualify into private client was quite challenging for me because I liked most areas of law. I think what did it for me was that I'm a people person. I like getting into the nitty-gritty of people's personal life. I like advising and helping, but also I think it was an area that I could learn and benefit and impact people around me. So as soon as I done my seat, I was like, Mum, you need to get a will. We never thought about it before, but I was like, you need to get a will. And she immediately went out to get a will. And I have subsequently seen friends who have sadly lost parents and the impact of not having your financial affairs in place and how it has negatively impacted their family. And that's not because they intentionally wanted that. They, when they were alive, they had such a close family unit. But I think we know, being in this world, that money has the ability to change people and can cause significant arguments and distress amongst family members. And so just having the knowledge to be able to put things in place as best as you can, I think is really useful. And I think that is what drew me to it. I can actually help people during my working day, but also in my everyday life all around me.
And what are you doing for your networking? You mentioned, I mean, the entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs. It's a good segment, and I noticed some really good quality events being put forward to try and mobilise those ecosystems. What do you sense for networking opportunities and looking at, like you say, new segments of client that need advice and haven't necessarily been advised?
So at this stage, I am going to everything and anything I can to sort of learn as much as I can, to really be a sponge, but also in the hopes that it will help me identify a particular area that I really want to focus in on, alongside the quarter protection work that I do. Like I said, I'm really passionate about people from social mobility backgrounds who are beginning to gain wealth but don't have access to the advice in terms of how to manage that wealth and the longevity of that wealth for their family and their future generations. I'll give you an example. So for a lot of people, a lot of our parents, our main asset is our property. And they think, amazing, I have this property and it's going to be passed down to my children once I pass away. But people are living longer. If you do own a property, usually you won't be given care from the council because you have assets, and it's only when you have assets from around £23,000 that then the council will step in and start paying for your care. You don't know that. You think you have this one asset that you're leaving to your children, and unfortunately,
and a London home can be
and
valuable.
A London home is very valuable, but of course you need to pay for good quality care as well, and you have not put steps in place to mitigate this potential risk. So things like that are just really interesting, and it's just, I'm just excited to really learn more about private wealth and trusts and tax and how it impacts my daily work. Do
you think also power of attorney? I mean, some people have got on one level that a will is needed. Do you think more people now are also?
Yes, definitely. I think it's just, I think the idea of talking about that you might not have capacity one day is very scary for a lot of people. And so they don't want to talk about a will, but most people get why you need a will. But then the idea that someone might have to make decisions for you later on in life when you may not have capacity, but you are alive, is also very scary. And it's just educating people, because if you do experience the unfortunate situation where you do get unwell and you lack capacity, it is an extra burden on top of the already emotional burden on your loved ones, not being able to have access to your finances if immediately, or to make important health and welfare decisions that align with your beliefs because a power of attorney wasn't put in place. So I think that there's an important piece about education, and I think we spoke offline about just doing education starting with the young professionals. I think we can think, oh, we've got forever to do this. It's almost like the discussion on pensions. I won't put money in my pension now because I'm young, but I think starting these conversations early really help in your future planning when you're thinking about your wealth in the long term.
And what's your advice for younger people coming through, maybe still studying, looking at careers in the law? It's difficult, economic environment out there.
Yeah.
When you talk to young people, what do you kind of say to them?
I think my most important advice would be to enjoy the journey. I think a lot of people have this I'll be happy when mentality. I'll be happy when I become a lawyer. I'll be happy when I get this thing. But actually, all your experiences on your road to becoming a lawyer is very relevant. I have a colleague who was a social worker and she wants to go into family law, and that work, being a children's social worker, is so relevant to her work as a future family lawyer. And so all your experiences will really help build your commerciality, but also provide a unique offering to your clients that other people may not have. I think once you become a lawyer, it all levels out. So you maybe didn't get your training contract straight away, or you get it a couple of years later. It all levels out once you qualify and you have something more to offer your clients. And I think it's very important to enjoy it, because I think if you enjoy that journey, you get everything out of what else you're doing, even if you're not a lawyer yet. And for most people, you do eventually get there in the end. It is a very challenging, it requires a lot of resilience, because rejection can, for many people, be part of the process. But I think it's a unique learning opportunity. And also when you start your training contract, for example, if you have had a job where you've had a lot of client contact, it's not so daunting, because you know how to write an email, you know how to write letters, you know how to receive feedback well, you know that it's not the end of the world, but it's essential for your growth, for you to be given constructive feedback that makes you a better lawyer in the long run. And so I think there's a lot that you can offer, even when you don't get a training contract straight away, or even when you don't qualify straight away.
There's many ways to succeed
There's many
as well,
ways
isn't
to
there?
succeed, yeah. And it's very interesting, because you then hear a lot of people's stories into getting into the law, or, sometimes people take a break to do something else and then they come back, and it adds a unique client offering as well. So the world is really your oyster. So I feel like you should just enjoy the journey into becoming a lawyer. That's my biggest advice.
So you're getting more involved in PCD. You're on our committee,
Yes, I
and
am.
it's fantastic to have you on board. What do you think the Next Gen group can kind of do? Why does it help you to be sort of plugged in to co-professional networks like that?
Yeah, I think for me as a young professional, part of my role is, for example, doing beauty parades for financial advisors, and I think just having a strong network of people where you can direct clients to is very beneficial. And I think it's also helpful for that learning piece. There are just some things that you may not do on a day-to-day basis that could still be very relevant to your job. Having people that you can contact to ask for, to bounce ideas off or learn from, I think is very, very, very helpful. But also that personal element to building a strong network. These are people who, God willing, will be in your career with you for many, many years to come. And so we need these relationships to be built organically. And I think PCD, for example, offers a nice, unique place to do it, because we're there, we're having a lovely lunch. It's not the awkward networking scenario where you're trying to get something from someone. You're literally just trying to get to know people who are starting off in their career just like you, and hopefully building strong, meaningful connections.
Fantastic. Well, so good to talk to you today,
It's
Melissa.
lovely speaking with you too.
Hopefully we'll see you along in June for the Next Gen lunch.
Definitely.
And I encourage people to come along and say hello and speak to you.
I've already sent some invitations out to people based on the last one. So
Fantastic. Well,
thank you for having me.
Lovely to chat.